WeRiseNation.com.
This where the grown men stay so you can kill that noise. We be the best to do it, coming out of Illinois. So sit back and relax, close your mouth and listen. We bout to hit you with this knowledge that you've been missing. Listen closely to the Grown Men Podcast. We Rise Nation is the station with the gift of gab. We dropping knowledge on these topics that you wanna hear. We on point with it, get the picture loud and clear. If you seek it, you will find what you looking for. And what you hear us, it'll leave you looking for some more. Open the door, let us in, we got a special vibe. Now close the door, lock us in, and enjoy the ride. We bout to talk about some things that make a lot of sense. And what we talking about, here sometimes will get intense. That's what we looking for, trying to spark a conversation. Join us live or you can listen on the We Rise Nation. This where the grown men stay so you can kill that noise. We be the best to do it, coming out of Illinois. So sit back and relax, close your mouth and listen. We bout to hit you with this knowledge that you've been missing. This where the grown men stay so you can kill that noise. We be the best to do it, coming out of Illinois.
Welcome back to the Grown Men Podcast. I am your host, BAN, and welcome back to the show. Well, as always, we have a lot of different topics to talk about, a lot of issues going on right now, not only in this country, but across the world. And it's a lot of different topics I like to talk about. But this week was a topic that was discussed on WeRiseNation.com, also discussed with We Rise Nation itself, the members, and we were all sitting around having a discussion, and it's about the music business. So, you know, we're heavily involved in music as well. Different artists have come and gone from We Rise Entertainment, and we work with a lot of different artists on the independent level, not mainstream, not the heavy level that everybody else is working with. But the issues that everybody seems to come across are the same things. And here's an example right here. A federal judge in New York just dismissed the case of Salt-N-Pepa from UMG's lawsuit that was dismissed by this federal judge. So this is a story that, you know, went down. This one is courtesy of Preezy Brown. And it read that a federal judge in New York has dismissed Salt-N-Pepa's lawsuit against the Universal Music Group, otherwise known as UMG, dealing a setback to the legendary hip-hop duo's effort to reclaim ownership of their master recordings. The lawsuit, filed by group members Cheryl Salt James and Sandra Pepper Denton, centered on Section 203 of the Copyright Act, which allows creators to terminate certain transfers of copyright after a statutory period. James and Denton also accused UMG of pulling their music from streaming services in retaliation after they initially filed suit. The decision was issued by U.S. District Judge Denise Cote and focused heavily on the group's original contract. According to the ruling, the duo failed to demonstrate that they ever owned the master recordings they sought to reclaim under federal termination law. Instead, the court pointed out to Noise in the Attic Productions, Inc., also known as NIDA, founded by producer Herbie Lugbug Azor as the original copyright holder of the recordings. The masters were later transferred from NIDA to Next Plateau Records, acquired by London Records, and ultimately absorbed by UMG. Even viewed in the light most favorable to plaintiffs, the 1986 agreements do not indicate that plaintiffs ever owned the copyrights to the sound recordings, or that they granted a transfer of those rights to anyone else, Cote wrote. In response to the ruling, James and Denton expressed their intent to continue fighting. We respectfully disagree with the court's decision and fully intend to pursue our rights on appeal, the duo said in a statement to journalist Lauren LaRosa. We, Cheryl James and Sandra Denton, also known as hip-hop icon Salt-N-Pepa, are the creative and driving force behind all our sound recordings and have performed these songs over the past 40 years. We remain committed to vindicating and reclaiming our rights as creators under the Copyright Act. UMG, meanwhile, signaled a willingness to move forward in its relationship with the group, despite the court's complete rejection of the artist's claims. Even with the court's complete rejection of their claims, we remain open and willing to find a resolution to the matter and turn the page so we can focus our efforts on working together to amplify Salt-N-Pepa's legacy for generations to come. James and Denton also addressed fans directly on social media, underscoring that the fight is not over. For the last few years, we've been fighting to regain ownership of the music we created. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees wrote in a statement yesterday, "We received a setback in the process, but we believe that justice will prevail in the end. We're still here. We're still Salt-N-Pepa, and we're not done fighting. Not just for us, but for every artist who deserves to own what they create." And that is also true. That's a true statement. You can't say any more than that. But see, back then, it was different than it is now. You know, that was my era. That was my era of hip hop, right? That's where, you know, I came into my own and listening to hip hop by listening to, you know, Salt-N-Pepa and MC Lyte and Queen Latifah and all the female MCs of that era that were saying something. You know what I mean? And there's so many. So I just named a few. I don't want to make it sound like I don't respect them all, because there are so many more. But not only just the female artists, but male artists as well. But when you dealing in the music business, what do we say? That's the music business. And the reason for that is when we were coming up, and like I said, we never made it mainstream. We never made it to be artists that everybody would know. We just did our thing. But back in that time and era when we were trying to get deals with different companies, I still got paperwork right now from record companies that wanted us to sign with them. But the money that they were offering at the time was a little bit of nothing. And I realized that at the time it was like 3 or 4 of us in a group. And if we would have signed for that money for these amount of albums that we put out, we wouldn't have owned any of those materials. That's why right now today, as an artist myself, as BAN, I own the rights to my music, and I will continue to own the right to my music. And it may not be worth anything to anyone else, but it may be worth something to me and my family. Because see, in the bottom line, that's all that really matters to me anyway. Because I've always said in my music that my music is my legacy. It's my digital audio biography of my life. The things that I've been through, the things that I've done, the places I've been, the people I know. All of that is entwined with my music. But for what I was just speaking on with what happened with Salt-N-Pepa, the simple fact is most artists from that era didn't own their masters. And a few went back and got that, right? You know, they went back and were able to try to get some of their stuff back. Some have been successful, but most have not. Because you see a lot of the hip hop artists from that era, and even some from today's era, that don't own their masters. And they don't know if they're going to be able to get those masters back. It continues to be an ongoing situation. and an ongoing fight. And I look at it from this perspective, like Salt-N-Pepa is saying, it's their legacy, and they're 100% right. Because when you see and hear jingles, right, sometimes these commercials and these radio stations, and they're playing these songs, and I always ask my people, I'm like, how much you think they getting paid for that? Nothing. Because for the simple fact, they never owned the masters. They don't even own their song. They were just performing artists. That's exactly what they were. And that's what people have to understand. That's why people went on tour. That's how they got paid. And in this era, it's the same way. But I'm going to speak on that a little bit later. But for right now, for these kind of situations like this that went on with Salt-N-Pepa and so many other artists that are fighting to get their masters back, they don't understand the music business. And see, a lot of people get into it. And I know right now it's different because now artists are getting endorsements to endorse other things and other products as well. They should, because for the simple fact, the music itself is no longer paying enough. Now, it's a lot of different reasons for that. Number one reason, as I always said, is the market is over flooded with music. That's the reason. Who's really buying music anymore? Because a lot of the times people are saying, look, I can stream this when I'm feeling this way or stream that when I'm feeling that way. How is that really going to help the artist in the long run? It used to be a time where you sold those cassette tapes, because I'm from that era. You sold those cassette tapes, those singles. You sold those EPs. You know, they had 2 songs on the front, 2 on the back. Everybody remember those records because the DJs used to spin them. And then even into the CD era, you could make some good money off of it, you know, if you had the right deal. Now, a lot of people had deals where they were getting a little bit of nothing. I remember Toni Braxton saying that some years back, that she was only getting a few cents off a CD. And I just found that hard to believe. But unfortunately, these things are true. Me, myself, and my crew, we had a manager, right? And he was cutting deals for us left and right. And we were doing little shows here and there trying to get our rep up and build up the foundation. But then we come to find out we getting a little bit of nothing. Same way we're working with these producers. If they putting the music down, they own that song. And we had a lot of people that we talked to and did business with that felt the same way. When we left the studio with our master tapes, we thinking in our mind, yeah, these are master tapes. But they really weren't. They were just the audio version. The masters, they always kept. Because see, down the line, if there was ever a need for a jingle in a commercial or something, you know, to sell a product, they felt they could have used it and they had the right to do it. And we never signed any contracts or anything like that. But for the simple fact, if we did, we really would be in a pinch. But in a situation like what Salt-N-Pepa is going through right now, it's unfortunate that this had to happen to them, but it happened to many other artists from that era, and it's happening to artists today. Because a lot of times people get the money up front, which is understandable. Look, if you had no money and somebody came to you and said, I'm going to give you $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 up front, that's a lot of money back in that era. The same way $1 million or $2 million might be like high money for you right now. And you saying to yourself, how could my music ever possibly generate that? So I'm going to take this million and I'm going to skate. But the reality is these record companies and these streaming platforms and all of these other services are buying up content. They continue to buy content every day. That's why you can't even hardly watch the cartoons that you want to watch anymore, because that content is being bought up. And they're packaging all these things together, you know, in different ways so they can sell back to the consumer. In order for you to get what you want, you have to buy something that you don't want. That's the way it's going right now. And the music industry is the same way. Because they got all kind of ways of using music in television commercials, in leads to television shows, all kind of ways of they're using other artists' music to do what they want to do with it. People are using them on political platforms, at their rallies and things like that. And the artists aren't getting broke off at all. They aren't receiving anything. That's why you've seen a lot of artists pulling their music from streaming services and different platforms because of that very reason. The industry right now is oversaturated with music. And most of it isn't good music. And when I talk about people saying, okay, well, you know what I'm saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? But when I think of music myself on a personal note, I'm not speaking for nobody else. But there's not too much music out here right now that I hear today that you can say this is going to be memorable for years to come. You don't see that kind of music. I don't hear that kind of music anymore. Maybe it's just me because I'm old school and I might be out of touch with what's going on with the new generation. I don't think I am because I always keep an eye and a pulse on what's going on. But the simple fact is, music is being generated so fast now that it's hard for you to be into what one artist is doing. Like back in the day, artists release albums every 2 or maybe 3 years. In between that time, they were on tour. And every now and then, right, they'd feature on another artist's music. But most of the time they stay within themselves. And that's a lot of the issues that I have today with what's going on with the music, is that there are too many artist crossovers. Because if you got 10, 11, 12 features on your album, are you featuring you or are you featuring your features? I want to hear what you have to say. When I buy your music, I want to hear 90% of what you're saying. Not what everybody else is saying. Yeah, if you got your guys on and you trying to put them on and give them a feature, I'm with that. But just to get established artists already, just because you want to work with them and you got all these features on one album and nobody knows what you're saying, nobody knows what type of artist you are, that's what I'm speaking on. Because I want the music that you put out to represent you and become from what you're saying, and I can get an understanding of who you are. And then that's how you build up a following. But see, a lot of them are not interested in that. They just interested in making the next hot song. And hip hop, unfortunately, the music part, has become a stepping stone to something else. It's just like everything else, right? They call it evolution. Things evolve. And I understand all that. But at the end of the day, I can't respect you if you don't respect yourself. But for the artists that are out here working hard and have worked hard in the past, I think they should have the rights to their music. Because after all, they are the ones who made it in the first place. Another thing I want to speak on when it comes to the music is, of course, streaming. And that is a big deal right now in the music industry, as most artists are flooding streaming services with their music. And at We Rise Nation, hey, we were doing the same thing. But when we look at what's been going on, there are different things that are happening, right? The landscape is changing. Now, way back when we got involved in it, because at first it was like we were doing our thing the old fashioned way. CDs, shows, getting to know people, mingling. That's how we were getting our point across, popping off mixtapes here and there, left and right. So we all got together and we met and we decided, hey, let's do something different, man. Let's see what this streaming thing about. And I think that was back in maybe 2011 or so. Let's see what that's about. Let's just put the music out there. We can blast it all over social media and see what kind of response we get. Really wasn't a big deal, right? Really didn't pay attention to it because at that time we were still pushing CDs. And I'm talking about, early 2000s. But as it progressed and it started to be the norm of the industry and everything started to become digital, we said, okay, let's step into this thing and get a little bit more organized. Let's start cultivating playlists and different things on different sites. And all of that, worked well and fine and dandy until you start looking at the numbers. And each year they continue to have reports about streaming payouts to artists. And we know for the simple fact, look, especially when you're an independent label and you got independent artists, we know how that works, right? You're not fishing big money in, you're not bringing big money in, so they look at it like your streams are not important to what's going on. And that's a fair thing. And then, you get with different distributors, whoever they may be, and they agree to distribute your music. Sometimes it's for a cost or a fee. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you pay the flat price to upload your music. And then from there, you're on your own as far as your publishing and everything like that. And that's great because it gives the artist the chance to be in control of everything, which myself, I've always wanted that ability to be in charge of what I do. However, the situations come up where it becomes a whole different situation, right? And when I'm speaking on that, I'm saying from a standpoint of you start looking at what these streaming companies are generating, the kind of revenue that they're bringing in. And of course, like every other company or any other corporation, they're always going to cry broke or that they're paying you fair. And it's up to an artist themselves who say that, because you have some independent artists that say it's fair for them and you have others that say it's not. I'm on the side of saying, look, this is what it is. We know the ball game when we step into this forum, right? We know that it may not be a fair payout, especially if you are a band or a group. Because see, these people have to split money sometimes 3, 4, and 5 different ways. If you're an independent artist and you're doing it all by yourself, like myself, self-made, we look at it like, okay, what can we do to make this a better situation for us? How can we put our music on blast and let people know where our music is and let them know where our shows are? Now, the streaming services do their part because their job is to put your music up there. Their job is not to promote you. It's not their business to do that. That's on you. That's what you have to understand from an artist standpoint. And I've worked with a lot of artists on the individual side who were looking at us when they were like, hey, we with WeRise, man, we expect y'all to do everything. And it's like, wait a minute. First of all, we don't have no signed contract with you guys. The first thing. And second of all, we never told you that this is what we're going to do for you. What we say is we will work with you with the music. Free studio time. Come in, get your music done. And at that point, you can do whatever you want to do with your music. If you bring us music, and I've worked with several artists that came to WeRise Studios, you left with your music that belonged to you. It didn't belong to us. We only wanted to help artists polish them up so they can get to the next level. If they wanted to stay with us, fine. If they wanted to go elsewhere, that's fine as well. I never harbored no bad feelings toward any artist that left WeRise Studios and went on to their other endeavors, whatever they were. We never did that. Still and I put this thing together, WeRise, to try to help artists rise up. Because see, back in our era, in our generation, they weren't helping artists like us. People were looking to take away from us, especially in that era, because once again, even into the late 80s and early 90s, hip hop was still in its infancy stage. Because I had producers all the time, left and right, saying, we would go in the studio, hey, let's hit this track. And I know I got this lined up for an R&B artist. We always face that, right? That's why we had to finally say, you know what? These producers aren't willing to work with us on our level. So then we start producing our own music. And it worked out for us because we were no longer paying out boatloads of money for something that we don't own the rights to. And we worked with producers in the past that we thinking that this is ours. And then at the end of the day, it wasn't. We heard other artists using the same tracks. So it's one of those situations that for us at We Rise Nation and We Rise Entertainment, we let artists know up front what we can do for you and what you can do for yourself. We're going to help you get to where you want to go. We're going to polish you up. We're going to shine you up and make sure you're ready to go to whatever level you want to go to. But the business side is what we have to know first. And back to this streaming, because I don't want to jump off onto a whole new topic. But with streaming, it can help you. It can get you out there. It can get you noticed. Everything above. There are more positive things about it, right, than negative things. However, some things that have come out lately gave me a kind of a bad feeling to say, let me step back on what I was saying earlier, because I've had my own personal experience with that, right? Because when you put your music online, let's be realistic. Streaming services do not care about who you are and what your music is. They don't. And that's fine. I respect that. Because I'm not expecting you to do anything for me that I can't do for myself. However, when you correspond with these distributors and you correspond with these streaming services and say, hey, look, these people are not me. I'm not that artist. Why is my music in their genre, in their category? That means you don't respect me. And at the end of the day, when you put your music, especially through a distributor, you would think that they would have a common courtesy to say, hey, they got it lined up there for what genres that you belong in. As a hip hop artist, I'm offended if I'm listed over there by someone who's an independent folk artist. And they may feel the same way about me. Like there are a lot of people online I see with the acronym B, period, A, period, N, period, or they don't have the period on the end. That was the reason I put that period there to distinct me from the rest of these artists. Because see, I've been using that name since 1987. And I got proof and evidence that I've been using that name. So it's one of these situations where, you know, these streaming services and these distributors, they think that you're just like everyone else. And I had that issue come up. And they accused me of something that I never did in the first place. Using fraudulent means to up the streams of my music. To what end? I'm not making millions of dollars. Never have. I carved out a niche for myself and my music. And yet they tell me what I'm doing when I know that I'm not doing something. And there are other artists who use the same acronyms that have been doing this stuff for years. And I have documented proof of emails that I've sent to all of these streaming services saying, that's not my music. That's not my music. Why is it in my catalog? My catalog is different. But see, they're not going to take the time to look at that. Because see, to them, they don't care. They group us all together in one basket and say, these are indie level artists. They're never going to be anything. They're never going to draw any money. That's their opinion. That's how they feel. Because see, at the end of the day, I never said I'm out here to make $1 billion off my music. Not $1 million. I'm out here to put my music out here because I can. I created the music. I wrote the lyrics. I mixed, mastered it, and did everything, even the artwork. Because I'm a self-made man. I always have been. You see, I don't wait on anyone to do anything for me. And I felt very disrespected, especially from my distributor, who I've been working with for almost 20 years. And for them to say, okay, we're just going to pull your catalog. I said, that's fine. If you go to WeRiseNation.com right now, That's where you'll find our music. And you don't have to pay for it if you don't like to, because we got a lot of our stuff up there, some from the past, some from the present right now. And it's up there to be downloaded. It's up there to listen to, whoever wants to come by and listen to it. And it's one of these situations where I got real heated at first. But see, when I get heated, I get active. And I double down on what is right. Because I know in this situation, I'm in the right. I know that I did the right thing. And I know for that reason, I will still rise regardless of anybody trying to hold me down. So for situations like that, this is me talking to the artist. Be in control of what's going on. Ask questions. Know why. Keep pushing these people. Because at the end of the day, this is your music. They don't care about it. You're just nothing to them. And a lot of these streaming services as well, they're giving some of your streams, part of your streams, to mainstream artists because they're feeling bad for the mainstream artists. And these are the main ones where record companies are bumping up their numbers. Give me a break. There's nobody listening to something that has 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 and 10 billion streams. I don't buy it. I just simply don't. There's not enough time in the day and not enough people in the world that are going to listen to one specific thing. People's attention spans are very short. So they're not going to sit there and just listen to one thing. They're going to listen to several things. But this is where we are right now. This is the moment that we're in when it comes to the music business. But see, we have to be smarter. We have to think smarter. We have to be faster and quicker. Get your website up. Establish yourself as an artist. Do the shows. Go out and do the work. Don't be lazy if you want to be successful. Whatever type of artist that you are trying to be, whether it's musical, whether it be acting, whether it be painting, whatever you are doing as an artist, always rise to the top. Because there are going to be people that want to keep you down, but they simply don't have the power to. You ultimately have the power to rise above it all. Because at the end of the day, if you don't care about yourself and your music and your creations, who will? But the struggle will keep going on because there will be people who will continue to try to keep you down. But you just have to keep rising above it. The music business can be a hard thing for a lot of people. And it is, because it's a hard way to go. But also it can be a lot of good. Because you can meet a lot of different people who like your music, who like what you're saying. And they will buy it strictly off the strength of they like you as a character or a person. And what you're saying, they can relate to. All of those things can be true. But you got to be the one to do the work. Because these streaming companies, these distributors, they're not helping you. They're only in it for what they can get out of it. What I like for the music business to do is get back to the basics. And what I mean get back to the basics, or excuse me, what I mean by getting back to the basics is the way it used to be. And when I say that is when artists used to be direct with their fans, and there are different ways to do that right now. So many media platforms, and I'm speaking of your own media platform, not someone else running it, not someone else doing this or that. If you're serious about being an artist and you want to connect with the people that are listening to you, and I don't call people fans, I don't call them marks, I call people who are generally appreciative of the type of music that you make. And I want to see it get back to that era. And the reason for that is that's what we had in past generations, where we had to connect with the artist. And a lot of people said, well, yeah, how would you get that connection though? right now is better than it used to be, because for the simple fact, you actually had to go to these places, line up at these shows, and maybe you get an autograph or whatever the case, right? But nowadays, people can get their Substack, they can get their website many different ways. They got their social media accounts. There's many different ways that people are engaging with their the fans, what they call them, fans. As I said before, I don't like to call people fans. I just like to say they're appreciative of your music, because those are the ones. If you can hook that few or that many, however it may be, because I always say there's only a certain group of people that are generally, the people that's down for you and your music. And then there are others who just listen to your music because it's part of another playlist that they're listening to. Sometimes you catch people that way, sometimes you don't. But I just like to see it go back to the old way where the artist was more engaged. And in this era, they can do it even better. And you can come up and be put in the position that you want to be in, if that's where you want to be. Like if you aspire to be a top artist, and this is one of the ways you can work your way up. Of course, at the end of the day, once you get into that system, then it becomes something totally different. It's up to you what you want to be in the long run and in the end, because you're the one who has to make that choice. You're the one who has to make that decision. Do I want to be an independent artist? Do I want to be a mainstream artist? Do I want fame and notoriety? Or do I want wealth? And see, that's the kind of argument that you have within yourself. And as I spoke before, and I talked earlier in the podcast about Salt and Pepper and what they were trying to do, which is build generational wealth and songs that they can pass down to their family and they can carry on with the legacy. Because that's what we all want at the end of the day. We want to be able to leave something behind to say, look, I was here, this is what I did, and my family can enjoy it. And if there's profits to be had, I would rather them have it than some big greedy corporation who could care less. And they'll use your stuff in commercials for who knows what kind of product they may use it for. Or it may be a company, something you hated. And yet you're not here and your music is out here and your family has no say so at all of how your music is being used. That's one of my biggest fears. I know that's what it would be, is that people will be using my music for something that I would adamantly disagree with if I was still alive. And that's what artists are trying to do, and that's what they should be trying to do. Because you want your music to be representative of who you are, past, present, and the future. And it's a way for your family to start accumulating generational wealth that may help them in the future as well. It has to start somewhere. Why not start with you? You are the one who has to decide where you want to be and what you want your legacy to look like. And a lot of us don't think about that because we're thinking about the day to day. And that's understandable because that's all we have, because that's all we know until we see tomorrow. Until we see tomorrow, all we see is today. So that's all we have. And that's all we got to go on. But then we have to think outside of that box. Because I talk with a lot of people all the time, right? And they say, I got to do this today because I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. But what if you are here tomorrow? Then you didn't plan for it. So now you don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. And that's the way it works when you're doing with your music. That's why I wanted to get back to the basics. I want people to be more involved with their own music instead of just showing up in the studio, putting your verse down, singing your song, and then you're out and you're with your crew. Find out what is going on behind the scenes, who's working on your music, What percentage of your music is owned by you? And I know they got lawyers, right, that sit down and they get paid to go over this, and they tell you this is what you get and this is what the company gets and this is what the producers get, the engineers, everybody got to get a piece. That's why you don't see bands anymore, because everybody has to get a piece. And it's hard to pay 20, 30 people off of one song. It's just simply hard. That song has to really make some money. Otherwise, a lot of times people didn't get paid. I've heard stories before about band members saying that they never got paid the money that was due to them for the work that they did. And it doesn't shock or surprise me, because once again, that's the music business. It's been going on for a long time in different ways, but from generation to generation, it's all been the same, that the artist has always been getting the short end of the stick. But at the end of the day, an artist has to know what their rights are and how to maintain those rights. See, you take an artist from back in the day like a Michael Jackson, right? Michael Jackson was an entertainer. So his music and his performances is what gave him his star power. He wasn't the one creating the music. That was done by producers, sometimes some of the greats like Quincy Jones. These people were great producers of music, and they were highly paid. So Michael Jackson's albums had to make a lot of money because a lot of people had to be paid. But I'm quite sure Michael Jackson didn't earn the bulk of his money from his music. He earned the bulk of his money from those tours and those endorsements and all these other different things he had going on. And that's the same with many other artists from that era that were big time on the big scale, right? And there weren't many bigger than Michael Jackson. But I just use him as an example of what can happen when you're not musically inclined, because he wasn't producing songs. He wasn't engineering them. He was performing them. He was a performance artist. And that's great, but everyone is not a performance artist. You know, you got a lot of different guys that are like Usher. He's a performance artist. He's not actually making the tracks. He's not engineering the tracks. He's not doing any of that stuff behind the scenes. However, he goes on tours and he makes big money at big venues. There are different levels to this game, and different artists do different things. But when you're on an independent level, a lot of these times you have to do these things on your own, and you have to be equipped to do them on your own. And some people are, and there are other people who aren't. They're not up for the task of doing this because it's a hard business. It's not easy. It's never easy. But if it's your passion, if it's what drives you, then you do it. That's what I do. And I've said this a million times. I'm never going to make $1 million off my music. I'm fine with that. But my music ultimately is my legacy. I can put my hands on it and say, look, I did this. This is what I did, for good or bad in other people's eyes. It's their opinion the same way it is for me. It's my opinion. So when you want to be an artist on a large scale or a small scale, you have to decide where you want to be. And then you go from there. That determines how your career will go and what you want to do with it. And when I see a lot of artists from the past right now who weren't compensated for the things that they did, I feel bad for them, because they didn't know that their music was going to do what it did. And unfortunately, they don't own the rights, so they don't have a say-so. And as I said earlier about the Salt-N-Pepa case, the company wants to work with them. Yeah, they want to work with you. They'll stick you out there and pay you to go to a few performances, But at the end of the day, ultimately, they own your music. So if you don't agree with the way they're using your music, guess what? You have no say-so whatsoever. They can do what they want when they want to do it, and they don't have to check in with you. They don't have to ask you anything. They take your music and they do what they want to do with it. And you have no say-so because you don't have control over the music. The only thing you control was the performance at that time. That's it. And for a lot of people, that's enough for them because they don't care. They get the money up front. I don't plan on living long, or whatever the case these people do today, right? They're not thinking ahead. They're thinking of what they're getting now. And as I said previously, they're really not in love with the music business. They're in love with the fame that is attached to the music business. They don't put in the kind of work that someone who is really passionate about the music will. Because there are people who spend 18 hours in the studio. They sleep on the couch, they get back up, and they do it again. Those are the people with the real passion. Those are the people who I typically like to work with. And that's why I don't work with that many people. Because you can't find that kind of dedication. I can count on one hand people that are dedicated like that, right? The people that I've come across, that I've worked with, and they had unfortunate situations that, you know, they're no longer here, or they chose to do something different with their life. And that's okay, because at the end, at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide where you want to go. If this is a hobby for you, that's fine too. If it's your passion, that's fine as well. But you have to be the one to decide where you want to go with this. Where will it lead you to? All these things matter. Because the bottom line is, it's your legacy, for good or bad, however you want to do it. You're going to be the one that's going to be in charge of how it's done. You're going to be the one who decides where you fit in when it's all said and done. And a lot of artists, they don't have that choice because they're so caught up in the moment, that moment. And it's great and it's magnifying, right? Because when you're on stage in front of all those people, and those people are adoring you and they like your music and they're loving you, and you're putting in the work at these shows, you're not really thinking about what's going on behind the scenes, and you're making this money up front. But when the people stop showing up at those shows and it slows down, where will you be then? I see so many artists online airing out their grievances about how they were screwed over by the record companies, right? And they did me bad. They did me bogus, man. Like, they left me out here with nothing. But at the end of the day, if you would have been looking into what was going on in the first place, you would have never been left out in the cold. But you weren't. You weren't focused. They caught you slipping. Forget the paperwork. The money made me overlook it. I've heard people say this several times. They weren't thinking about it. And look, when you're 17, 18 years old, you're not thinking about paperwork. That's just not something that you are thinking about. You're thinking about getting in there, doing what you're doing, and then hopefully come up. Because ultimately, that's what a lot of us want to do. And that's come up. And however we come up, however we get there, we're going to do whatever it takes, right? But then you have to look at the other side, and that's the business side that everybody runs from because they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. But you have to make sure that your publishing is right and that the credits for your song are right. And if you can, get producer's credit. Work in there with the producer. He may be the executive, or you may be. That's how it works. You have to decide where you want to go with this thing. You have to know in your mind that you have done everything you can to make sure that you are successful as an artist. Given 100%. Because at the end, you're betting on yourself. You're not betting on anyone else. This is all on you. That's the mentality that you have to have if you want to be successful in this business. And when I define success, I mean you're able to put out your own music. You're able to curate it. It's exactly the way you want it to be. It's your vision and not someone else's. Because that's what I do. And that's what the artists that I have worked with my entire career have done. It's always been one of those things where when we can look back and say, okay, I would have done something different. Of course, we all say that. If I'd have knew then what I know now, we all have that experience. But then we have to get past that and deal with what's in front of us right now in the present. And then we work from there. And as artists, we have to continue to do that. We have to continue to keep striving and keep reaching and keep learning more and more about this business. I like people who can do it all. That's why Prince was one of my favorite artists, because Prince could do it all. Prince could play the instruments, he could write the music, and he could perform. That's what made him great to me. He was the complete, right? Because he can do it all. And people always get those two comparisons, Michael Jackson and Prince, and always say, I'm going to take Prince. Michael Jackson was a hell of a performer. He was the better performer on stage. I will give him that. But when it comes to the overall scope of the music business, I have to look at Prince. Because he could write it, he could play those instruments, and he could also perform. Those were the things that were important for you as an artist, if you are an artist of music. Most people, it's important to them to know exactly how their music is laid out, and they want the credit for it as well. They should have it. Because if you're laying it out and it becomes a popular song or a popular album, you should get producers credits. You're the artist. They say, oh, the artist shouldn't get producer credits. Why is that? Because if that artist is there putting in that work and they don't leave the studio and go off to the club or go somewhere else and do something else, they're right there from start to finish. Because there have been many times I done had sessions that lasted into 3 o'clock in the morning. And dudes that left up out of We Ride Studios 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning after putting that work in. And I'm still the one that has to sit in the chair and figure out how this goes, how this is going to work. See, people don't know about that part of the music business because they're not involved in it. They lay their verses down, they put the hooks down, slap some tags on it, and they out the door. They don't know what those engineers are doing. They have no idea. They don't have a clue. That's why some of the guys, we would sit them down. Like after they put their lyrics down, we would all sit down and say, watch what he do. And when the guy's on the mixing board, when the guy's trying to get those levels correct to make you sound crisp and clear, to make you sound intelligible when you're speaking, watch what they do. These are the guys who are putting in the work on your song long after you've gone home. And that's the way it should be for you. Because the song doesn't end just when the music stops. No, that's one part of the process. There are several levels you have to complete in order to make your music ready for the public. And when I say that, I mean ready for public consumption. Ready for them to listen to you loud and clear. And you want to put your best foot forward. You want to put your best material out there that you can possibly do. Because then people will know who you are. They will respect you and understand that you are doing the best. You are doing the most that you can do. And at the end of the day, they either accept you or don't. But they can't say that you're not self-made because you had your hand in every aspect of what was going on. That's the key component. That's what I've done my whole career, and that's what I continue to do because it's important to me and it should be important to you. Well, folks, it appears my time is up. I'm glad you came in to listen to the Grown Man Podcast. We always got a lot of different things to talk about, and I'm sure between now and next week, we'll have more to talk about. Head on over to WeRiseNation.com. See what we got going on over there. Check out the podcast. Check out some of the vintage items we're starting to upload. Check out the whole music catalog as we're now streaming free and we're up on WeRiseNation.com. All the mixtapes from all of the different artists that we work with, myself included, so much music, so much material. Head on over there and see what you'd like to hear. Folks, it's great to go over there and listen to a few songs, and we're not shoving things down your throat, trying to push you to buy it. Is feel free to listen to it. If you like it, download it. Hey, whatever you want to do. Well, until next time, folks, I am your host, BAN, and I will talk to you soon.
This where the grown men stay so you can kill that noise. We be the best to do it coming out of Illinois. So sit back and relax, close your mouth and listen. We bout to hit you with this knowledge that you've been missing. Listen closely to the Grown Men Podcast. We Rise Nation is the station with the gift of gab. We dropping knowledge on these topics that you wanna hear. We on point with it, get the picture loud and clear.